Hey guys, it's Danielle, and today is Monday Marriage Challenge. We are going to talk about this week's marriage challenge. I am sitting in my car, y'all, waiting to pick up my husband from his CrossFit class. We are using one vehicle today. My little brother has our other car, so we're making it all work. So I figured while I sit and wait for him, I would go ahead and talk about this week's marriage challenge. So yay! I hope you guys don't mind that I'm sitting in the car. If you have not checked out my Monday marriage chat, then I suggest you pause this video and then go check out that marriage chat, because if you haven't realized, the weekly challenges do correspond with the marriage chats. So pause the video. I will put a card up for you guys to click on and go over and watch that marriage chat if you have not done so. If you've already watched the marriage chat, then you can probably guess what this week's marriage challenge is. This week's marriage challenge, you guys, is going to be to discuss your sexual boundaries with your significant other. Yep, we're gonna do it. We're gonna talk about those sexual boundaries. So if you have never had this conversation with your spouse or significant others about what your boundaries are, what you feel is acceptable, unacceptable, appropriate, inappropriate touch, what's okay with you, just all things sex. If you have not done that, then this week is going to be the week to do that. If you have done that, already had that conversation, but some things have changed along the way, you know, your boundaries may have changed, or some things that you thought were okay are no longer okay, or some things that you used to think weren't okay are now okay, and you feel like you guys need to have a refresher conversation, then this week is the time to do that. So that's what we're gonna do, you guys. All right, so the question, how in the heck do you have this conversation? Now, if your conversation with your spouse is open and free and carefree, and you guys just easily talk about anything, then it'll be easy just to be like, hey, I think we need to talk about some sexual boundaries. That will not come off as odd or weird or whatever the case may be. However, if this is going to be new territory for you, or you are just kind of squirmish about this kind of thing, or you're worried that your significant other won't take it the right way, or will take it out of context, or whatever, then having a plan having a plan of action on how to have this conversation is going to be extremely important and key. So here's some things that I suggest. I suggest having this kind of conversation in a neutral place. So a lot of times when you want to discuss something difficult or hard, and this, guys, this really depends on your relationship, your significant other, and all of those things. But if you find that you are in a relationship where having a conversation about something hard or difficult can turn into a debate or an argument or hostile, I always recommend having these type of conversations in a neutral kind of location. So out to dinner, at a coffee shop, on a walk. Walking is a natural endorphin, and so a lot of times when you walk and talk, it calms you. So if you have a person, or if you're a person that tends to get anxious with conflict or just hard topics, walking can calm you for that type of conversation, and it grounds you, and it helps having those hard conversations a little bit easier. So I always recommend doing these type of conversations that seem to be more difficult in those type of places. You obviously don't want to have a conversation about sexual boundaries or sex right when you're about to have sex, or right after you have sex, or you know, in your bed, you know, laying in your bed and having this kind of conversation can sometimes cause more conflict. So you definitely don't want to do it like that. And I would say you would want to give your significant other a heads up. So you don't want to spring this on them. You don't want it to be that you guys are, you know, having dinner or whatever you're doing, and out of the blue you're like, hey, let's talk about sexual boundaries. What? Where'd that come from? Where'd that come from? So I would suggest, you know, if your significant other hasn't watched the marriage chat, I would say start there. You know, bring it up in a roundabout way. What do you think about sexual boundaries? You know, would be a question that could lead into the conversation. And you know, I was watching a YouTube video and she was talking about sexual boundaries within a relationship or within a marriage, and I'm curious to know what you think. So bringing it up in that type of manner, so opening that door for communication. I would also suggest that maybe you talk to your partner and say, hey, I've realized that we have never talked about like sex and what's okay or what's not okay in our relationship, or what our expectations are, what we expected from each other. And I would love for us to just sit down and talk about that, because I think that it's important that we talk about that. So going at it from that angle. Or you remember that time we talked about sex? It's been so long since we've talked about it. I think I want to like refresh, because maybe your needs have changed or my needs have changed, and I feel like we should sit down and talk about this thing. So giving them a heads up that you want to talk about sex and boundaries and things like that, I feel is important, so that they don't feel blindsided or feel attacked or feel like they've been doing something wrong for so long, and now all of a sudden here you come telling them that you don't like something or they've done something wrong, and that can make a person feel defensive and attacked if they feel that way. So opening up the door from the standpoint of, I want this to be an open discussion. I want to know what you think, and I want to share what I think, and then I want us to talk about if we have any boundaries and what those look like, is a great way to start this conversation. And then maybe giving each other a fun little exercise. You know, let's write down some things that would be absolute boundaries for us, some things that we are like, absolutely not, do not go there. And I'm gonna write down what I think you're gonna say no to, and you write down what you think I'm gonna say no to, and then we'll compare our list. That kind of thing. So making it fun and a game and engaging while still talking about something serious and hard. So that's an idea, is to turn it into a game. You know, writing it down, things like that. And I think once you have created this list of boundaries, if you have things that you've realized along the way that you don't like, you know, I'll take my boundary, for example, grabbing my breast. If you've realized, I don't like when you just, you know, grab my breast whenever you feel like fondling my breast, Then the next thing would be to explain why and how that makes you feel, what about that brings discomfort, and try to get your partner to understand where you're coming from. So not like, I just don't want you to touch my breasts, like I just don't like it. And even if that is the reason, even if you're just like, it's my body and I just don't want you to do it, that's okay. But explaining that, a lot of times people like to understand the why behind something. You know, you remember being a kid and saying to your parent, why can't I? And they're like, because I said so. And you're like, that's the reason? That's not enough. Why mommy, why daddy? But really their answer may really have been, because I've said so. I've learned as a parent that it's usually because I'm frustrated, annoyed, irritated, and just don't want to deal with it, and I don't have a real reason on why, so it's because I said so. So if that's your reason, you know, when you touch my breast, it's just annoying, then I would say that, like, it's annoying, I don't like that, you know, it just throws me completely off. You know, my breasts are in front of me, and so when you grab them, it's like, oh my god, I'm just thrown for a loop, or whatever the case may be. So that would be another thing that I would suggest. And again, this is a week challenge, so this can be a week-long thing. You know, you may bring up the conversation, approach it one day, then you may talk about it another day, then you may play a game, then talk about your list, explain your reasons why, and then kind of wrap it up or whatever. And then wrapping it up can be, you know, creating another game. Okay, so let's talk about sex, and sometimes me not being in the mood and you really pressing the issue. I think that we should create something fun, so that it's not, so we're not angry, or it's not perceived as me just saying no. So what's something fun that we could do or create as a couple that only we know, so that we know that I really am emotionally spent or physically spent or whatever it is, or you know that I am like feeling it tonight and I'm ready to whenever you're ready. So maybe creating something that's unique for you guys as a couple, and then playing with that, you know, over the next couple of days. So those type of things would be another way to talk about this conversation. Also, you guys, you never want to give somebody something without, or you never want to take something from somebody without giving them sort of a replacement, if that makes sense. So if you're saying to your significant other, there are days that I am just emotionally and mentally spent and I just don't feel like having sex, and they're like, okay, well, where does that leave me? You know, because there could be 3 or 4 or 5 days out the week that you are emotionally, mentally spent. So where does that leave me? Well, here's how you can help me so that maybe I'm not so emotionally and mentally spent. All right, y'all, so I'm sorry if my background changed a little bit. I had to pause my recording as I picked up my husband from his class. But anyway, so you don't want to leave a person without any answers. So if you're like, I'm emotionally spent, and they want to know, well, what can I do, you know, if you are emotionally spent and I'm not emotionally spent, so what can I do? So the key is to be able to have some answers for them. You know, it could be something as simple as, I need you to take over bedtime routine with the kids. I need you, you know, if you could do that for me, that gives me time to decompress and decompose and have some self-care, which then helps me become more mentally and emotionally available for you. You know, it could be take over dinner for me. You know, if you can be responsible for dinner, or if you can be responsible for for the kids' morning routine, or if you can iron my clothes for me so that I can have that few minutes in the morning to have some self-care. Whatever it is that you feel like will help you with your emotional well-being or your mental well-being or your spiritual or your physical or whatever, you want to offer that to them as an olive branch for them to be able to help you with that, so that maybe you will be more emotionally and mentally available to have sex more throughout the week. So you don't ever want to take something without giving something, or have a problem without providing some form of solution for that problem. So that's another thing with this marriage challenge, is as you talk about sexual boundaries, and as you talk about, hey, I don't feel like it's fair for me to have to roll over and have sex with you when I'm really not emotionally feeling it, but I do want to be emotionally available to you, and here is how you can help me become more emotionally available to you. So being able to talk about those things and communicate those things is so important, and these are just tiny baby steps on how to begin that communication around sex. So the challenge for this week is to sit down and have that conversation with your significant other, about your sexual boundaries, emotional well-being. Does no mean no in a marriage or a committed relationship? What are their feelings? What are their thoughts? How can you guys come to a mutual agreement on this, where both partners are happy and fulfilled and agree? Those type of things. So I hope that makes sense, you guys. I hope I explained this challenge in a way that is beneficial and helpful to your relationship. If you have any questions in regards to this marriage challenge, feel free to leave them below and I will answer them to the best of my ability. If there's anything else you want to chat about, or if there's anything that you want to chat about, feel free to leave that below, or shoot me an email, DM me on Instagram, and we will certainly chat about it. Anything around this topic or anything else. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for joining me in the car. I know this was an unconventional place to do a marriage challenge, so I do appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. You guys are the MVPs. I love you, and I will see you next time.